I'm talking today about post-traumatic growth. So trauma doesn't need to be a life sentence. There are benefits to trauma, and all of us in this world, because we're like caged animals, will experience an amount of trauma in our lifetime. Each has their own experience and what that means to them, but trauma doesn't need to destroy. And so Peter Levine, who's a healing trauma specialist, says the paradox of trauma is that it doesn't need to be destroyed or destroy someone's life. It can also be a place of transformation and resurrection. And the places that happen for people in trauma is they have a place where they compensate from the trauma in order to save themselves, in order to create a place of safety. And in that compensation is the benefit of trauma. And the place where, for example, if someone is traumatized, severely abused by their family and cannot be near their family, then they create this place, this compensation of independence. And that independence then creates a place of restoration and resilience. Other places that people can see in compensation of trauma is sometimes friendships where people really need other people to come and support them, creates this compensation of connectedness and helpfulness in a place where somebody maybe has an eating disorder from a trauma, because I believe all eating disorders are created from trauma, that the compensation then is to go into treatment and find the place where they are healing themselves and reconnecting with their wants and needs. So this place where the resurrection or transformation from the trauma creates this benefit of healing. So some people thank their eating disorder for creating a place for them to come into treatment and gather this knowledge and connection and skills that actually benefit them lifelong and in other areas. Yes, because the experience of trauma doesn't really have verbiage, but this is how I define trauma: the inability to stay present. Trauma has a place that takes us back in time to the event, or the past becomes intrusively present. And in that intrusive presence becomes a place where symptoms like anxiety, depression, self-harm, negative self-talk, self-judgment all come flooding in. And so they're not able to stay present. There's a disassociation or a disconnect with their life around them, and an inability then to step forward or respond to life. Everything becomes a reaction. That's how I define it. And it can come from natural traumas, earthquakes, tsunamis. Some people are in war zones, and so those that's man-made, but it is a trauma in their environment. And then there is the interaction trauma, where there's a breach of a human relationship. Correct. So, and some people in that you would think has a traumatic event, like a rape, if they got to complete a self-protective response by escaping and fighting for themselves, they may not have trauma. So trauma is the place where there is an inescapable attack, in a sense, so that someone doesn't get to complete their self-protective response. So sometimes bullying is ignored as something that can be traumatic, but it is traumatic to the person that's feeling that, and that can be traumatic even though there wasn't a specific event, but an elongation of pecking away at someone's psyche. I think as therapists or trauma healers or even friends, we can encourage it by noticing where the person is doing well or where their successes are or the things that they have used in compensation that are enlightening. Another piece that can happen for someone is the growth is that they recognize it themselves, and the place that a person who has trauma can access it is, first of all, to be really, really patient with themselves as they heal. And another place is to use all the signals of the trauma, whether it be disassociation or self-harm, and transfer that to self-care. Whatever self-care means, that's where they can then access the compensation of the trauma that is going to be beneficial and life-freeing instead of this imprisonment of trauma that keeps re-traumatizing over and over again, or imprisons the person from being able to move forward and connecting with themselves. I believe it is. Self-care is the place to access that compensation and develop more of it. Well, I'm encouraging people to be selfish. I'm encouraging people not to be self-centered, but to be selfish in that they are a priority. And so self-care isn't getting a manicure per se, it can be, but it would be noticing that your body is your one home that you're going to have and how you're going to take care of it. Or sometimes self-care is practicing non-judgmental talk to yourself, or practicing self-talk in a positive way, having conversations with yourself that are positive. So self-care comes in a lot of different ways. Self-care comes in taking care of your mental health, taking care of your physical health, taking care of your relationship with yourself, taking care of healthy reciprocal relationships around you. It does not mean codependence or attacking yourself or negative self-talk. So that's why I talk about self-care, and if someone interprets self-care as selfish, then I'm saying, please be selfish. Please be selfish in that way that just takes you to a place of resilience and restoration, and a place where you can recognize that your trauma gave you an opportunity to transform, resurrect, and create meaning out of life.